Alright, let's talk about the Jonas Brothers. For a certain generation, they were the boy band. They were the guys on the Disney Channel, the faces on the lunchboxes, the sound of middle school dances. Their story as a trio is legendary, a perfect little capsule of late 2000s pop rock. But I'm going to float a theory, and just hear me out on this one. What if the most interesting part of the Jonas Brothers story isn't what they did together? What if the real magic, the real artistic growth, happened when they weren't the Jonas Brothers at all? It's a bit of pop music heresy, I know. It's like saying the best Beatles songs were on their solo records. Okay, maybe not that dramatic, but you get the idea. It's a fun little thought experiment. Think about it. The music they made during their 6-year hiatus was, in many ways, more daring and more defining than a lot of their early work. Before the breakup, before the solo careers, there was the phenomenon. The Jonas Brothers weren't just a band, they were a full-blown cultural moment, perfectly engineered by the Disney Channel. It all started around 2005, with Nick's solo deal that morphed into a group project. Columbia Records didn't quite know what to do with them, but Disney saw the potential. They were wholesome, they were talented, they played their own instruments. A key differentiator from the boy bands of the 90s. And they had that sibling chemistry that was just magnetic. Their self-titled album in 2007 was the real launchpad. This was the record that gave us SOS and Hold On. It was pure, unadulterated pop rock, full of crunchy guitars, catchy hooks, and lyrics about teenage romance that were just angsty enough without being scary. They starred in the Disney Channel movie Camp Rock, which basically felt like a 90-minute commercial for the band, and it worked brilliantly. The end, when it came, was abrupt. In October 2013, just days before a new tour was supposed to kick off, they canceled everything. In interviews, they were blunt. Nick was the one who initiated the conversation, feeling that the magic was gone. He felt the band was becoming a cage, limiting their individual growth. Nick had already released a side project back in 2010 called Nick Jonas and the Administration. The album, Who I Am, was a decent collection of power pop and soul-inflected rock. It was a solid effort, but it didn't really set the world on fire or establish a distinct identity for him outside the group. Joe also gave the solo thing a try before the official split. In 2011, he released his album Fast Life. This project was a significant departure from the band's pop rock sound, leaning heavily into electropop and R&B. But the album struggled commercially. It seemed audiences weren't quite ready to see Joe Jonas in this new light. After the breakup, both Nick and Joe Jonas set out to prove themselves as artists in their own right. But after the band split, it was Nick who surprised everyone with a string of solo hits. He reinvented himself with songs like Chains, Jealous, Chainsaw, and Close, each one showing a new side of his artistry. Chains and Jealous brought a sleek modern R&B vibe, while Chainsaw and Close revealed a more vulnerable, emotional Nick than fans had ever seen before. Each track felt like a statement. Nick was no longer just the youngest Jonas brother, but a genuine solo star with his own sound. Meanwhile, Joe was busy reinventing himself too. He formed DNCE, a band that was all about fun, color, and infectious energy. DNCE exploded onto the scene with Cake by the Ocean, a global smash that was impossible not to dance to. Then came Kissing Strangers, featuring Nicki Minaj, which kept the party going and showed off Joe's playful side. While Nick was climbing the charts with his smooth, soulful pop, Joe was leading a band that looked and sounded like a disco party come to life. The contrast was striking. Nick's music was moody and intimate, while DNCE was all about wild hooks and good vibes. Both brothers proved they could thrive outside the Jonas Brothers, each carving out a unique lane, Nick with his emotional, genre-blending pop, and Joe with DNC's playful dance floor anthems. Their solo years weren't just a detour, they were a showcase of how much both Nick and Joe had grown as artists. Whether you were into Nick's heartfelt ballads or DNCE's party anthems, there was something for every kind of pop fan. The solo era was proof that the Jonas Brothers were more than just a band. They were three artists, each with their own story to tell. And as the world would soon find out, those stories were far from over. When you look at the solo years, you have to measure success in two different ways: commercial impact and artistic growth. Nick's Jealous was certified 3 times platinum in the US, while Joe's Cake by the Ocean with DNCE went a staggering 5 times platinum. The artistic leaps they took were arguably more important. You could hear the influence of artists like Prince and Stevie Wonder, artists he probably couldn't have fully channeled within the pop-rock confines of the Jonas Brothers. Joe's journey with DNCE was a similar story of artistic liberation. After 6 years of solo ventures, side projects, and separate lives, the unthinkable happened. The announcement came with a new single, Sucker, and it landed with the force of a pop culture meteor. It debuted at #1 on the Billboard Hot 100, a first for the band. What made Sucker so brilliant was that you could hear the influence of their solo years all over it. The accompanying album, Happiness Begins, continued the trend. The album debuted at #1, selling the equivalent of 414,000 units in its first week. The boys were officially back and bigger than ever. And if you want a fresh take, check out Halsey's cover of Sucker. Her version is soulful and raw. I actually think it's better than the original. It's one of those rare covers that brings a whole new vibe to the song. So, here we are at the end of this journey. Back to our original question. Were the Jonas Brothers better apart? It's a tricky one, because the answer isn't a simple yes or no. Jealous and Cake by the Ocean are undeniable pop masterpieces that stand on their own, completely separate from the band's legacy. However, the magic of their reunion can't be ignored. Ultimately, the beauty of the Jonas Brothers story is that you don't have to choose. Each era has its own merits, its own classic songs, and its own place in their incredible 2-decade journey. But that's just my take on it. As a fellow music nerd, I'm curious to hear what you think. So, what's your verdict?